Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining the AtScale 10 Steps to Successful Semantic Layer Adoption webinar. We are here today to discuss the 10 easy steps to adopting a semantic layer. Our speakers today is, I'd like to welcome Jen Underwood. She is the founder of Impact Analytics, LLC, and is a recognized analytics industry analyst. She has a unique blend of product management, design, and hands-on development of data warehouses, reporting, visualization, and advanced analytics solutions. In addition to keeping a constant pulse on industry trends, she enjoys digging into oceans of data. In the past, Jen has held worldwide product management roles at Microsoft and served as a technical lead for system implementation firms. My name is Wendy Gradek. I am a principal product manager at AtScale. We can be found on LinkedIn as well as Twitter. A few items before we get started. Learn more about AtScale. We can be found on our AtScale blog. There's a lot of information on AtScale within our blog that's written by many of our company employees. In addition to that, we have a Planning Your AtScale Reporting Migration resources and white paper. You can also give us a try. We are also available on the cloud in the marketplace. Our agenda today will be a discussion around making your case for AtScale, migration to assessment, migration steps. We do have a short demo for you on Tableau Importer. We have and then we'll discuss test and enjoy, and we'll have a Q&A session. So what is AtScale? AtScale provides the analytical culture, an easy way to help with reporting out data from your data warehouse. It provides speed, scale, and simplicity. Mainstream reporting solutions are not scaling to current needs, and increasing volumes and varieties of data combined with modern business intelligence practices that enable self-service data access is overwhelming these reporting tools and infrastructure. I'm sure many of you have experienced a long wait time in trying to get data out of your large data warehouses. What AtScale brings is the ability to get these data insights out rapidly and without a lot of fuss. So from that perspective, we have our architecture where you can see we become your metadata layer. AtScale is designed to support key requirements of modern big data analytics. We support a hybrid of data access to the most common big data platforms and provide open data interfaces such as SQL, MDX, or API to virtually any analytics front end. AtScale's self-tuning engine ensures interactive performance for data consumers on even the largest data sets. What we do is we provide the analytics to your analytics insight in your business tools. Your business analytics tools get the data out of AtScale, and we access your big data platform. So not only do we run your aggregation for you and manage the aggregation for you, but we also help reduce the traffic that is hitting your big data platform. In addition to that, AtScale solves a number of problems, such as delivering optimized big data reporting and analytical scalability. What that means is AtScale is a live connect. So you will always see the most current data out of your big data platform with AtScale. It also accelerates reporting performance. It eliminates inefficient pre-processing. From that perspective, we, like I said, manage our own aggregate table lifecycle. So we decide what is needed based on the queries that are being sent to us and that are being requested by the business intelligence tool. So from that perspective, we manage and maintain all of the aggregate tables that we produce. We also assess whether or not we should create new aggregate tables and retire and delete old ones. We also help you save money on cloud querying and computing costs. Because your reporting tools will hit AtScale, AtScale determines whether or not a query needs to hit the fact table in your big data platform or not. More often than not, these queries will only hit the AtScale environment without hitting your fact table on your big data platform. And that does help reduce cloud query costs. Jen?
Thank you. Thanks for the excellent introduction. Hi, my name is Jen Underwood, and today we're going to talk about building your case for making this move. So business intelligence on big data is really neither a product nor a system. It's really a continuously evolving architecture and a collection of various reporting applications that will be using the architecture. And with AtScale, you can start small and secure quick wins even within 1 month and incrementally migrate over time. If you've ever moved BI systems before or migrated data warehouses and those types of things, it is a similar concept. Since a migration will require cooperation of different resources across enterprises and departments in your organizations and potentially some reporting process changes, it is important to approach it as a project properly. Do not proceed in isolation and think build it and they will come. Always to be aware of your upstream and downstream dependencies when you're moving reporting systems. Those are always quite important. So as you're building your business case, be thinking, and as technical professionals, we usually forget this, but we need to have the business need and cost justified, supported usually by a return on investment. And return on investments in these particular solutions can be really compelling because you're talking about time, effort, scalability, opportunity costs of, types of opportunities you might not even be able to explore without having access to big data. So new opportunities might be opening, and you might be exploiting new ways to maximize revenues, reduce costs, or diminish risks. So as you socialize this AtScale project throughout your organization to garner support, you'll probably want to share relevant case studies on how these types of solutions have helped competitors in your industry or other groups in other industries align their organization to some of those objectives. Some other things to be thinking about are what metrics will be used to evaluate your stakeholders' performance. So when you're speaking to someone about business value, always be thinking, and I had a boss once tell me, always be thinking about how that person is measured and communicate in that language. So the measurement and what motivates them and how they're measured will help you make your case in calculating the business value. A process overview. So when I took a look at this and I was writing the project, writing this white paper for AtScale, I took a look at some of my old migration projects through the years and all the different steps that were involved. So essentially there's many steps that are repeated if you've ever done any sort of BI or reporting, kind of incremental Kimball type data warehouses. A very similar approach, and again, it doesn't have to be boiling the ocean. We're talking about very iterative little sprints of development here. So what you'll start doing is assessing the environment, and I'm going to dig deeper into each one of these steps so you understand what to look at, how to be successful. And then after looking at the assessment, you'll want to design the model itself, looking at the model, and Wendy's going to show a very interesting way to fast track, if you're using Tableau today, Tableau models into the AtScale environment. So that's a really cool utility that was designed by this particular team. And when you do have your model, you'll look at are there any analytical gaps that you might have. You might be solving new types of problems or data, and you'll want to map that data and make sure it's available in the source itself. Once you have your data in a model, you'll update your reports and validate they're still working. Sometimes updating reports simply can be a connection, connection string level upgrade. Sometimes you're going to have to look at some of the custom formulas that are in there. And again, I'm going to dive deeper into these specific topics as we go on today. And you'll go live, and don't always forget one of the lessons learned over and over again throughout the projects is, you may know the system, but your users may not, or the folks in your audiences may not understand what they're doing. So when you do go live with the new system, it's important to have some level of training, some resources, maybe even some videos on how they can use these systems. And for the sake of this, a video might simply just be connecting and changing a connection string. It might not be much more difficult than that, quite frankly. But hopefully the value is much greater than the effort that your users will have to go through. So the 10 steps to success. You've got the money, you've got the support through your organization. Now you want to make it happen. And to make it happen as technical pros, you're going to want to assess the current environment. And really, even if it wasn't a technical situation, you'd probably assess the current situation that you're in and figure out how to navigate it. And the next step is going to be evaluating your data sources, looking for where that business logic lies. And business logic can be really tricky. In analytics projects, business logic can live in stored procedures in the database. It can live in scripts within, ETL processes. It might live within the reports themselves and custom measures. So the business logic can certainly live and hide in different places. And that's probably one of the trickier areas that you will want to make sure that you have subject matter experts involved to understand the types of calculations and where those things might be living today. And I already kind of talked about, these are the different steps again that I just talked about in that roadmap. Let's dig into these. So what do I mean by assessing the current environment? And what I'm talking about here is really looking at the different types of information that the input and the output at a very simple, for my computer science folks, it's what goes in and what comes out. So looking at the current and future state of where you want your architecture to be. So those might be servers, you might be moving to the cloud, making sure that you have enough compute and throughput, making sure folks that own these data sources are aware of what you're doing and that you'll be able to load some data or move some data from it. You'll also want to take a look at your ETL process flows. Some of these you may already have, and it may not change. It may not change from the source systems that you have. In other cases, it might. So again, it's just mapping your source to destination and understanding the points that you're changing. Another thing really to be looking at your data model. So the data model doesn't usually change very much from where it might exist today, and that's always a real good thing. So if you are moving from, say, a dimensional data warehouse, the migration will be fairly simple for you because it shouldn't be much data model changes, which means the reports too should work fairly well as long as you're not doing too many crazy calculations in there with custom non-ANSI type scripts. Then you'll look at the analytics business intelligence tools and the different types of apps users might be using. They might be using Excel, they might have Click, they might have Power BI, Tableau. They might be using lots of different applications in there. It's just a matter of understanding what they're doing. And don't always limit it to BI tools. A lot of times, too, you'll have applications themselves that are linking or portals internally that are linking to reports that these solutions may be using. last but not least, when you're looking at assessing the current environment, is thinking about your upstream and downstream communications and dependencies that folks will have. So it's always a really good idea. There may be things that you did not come across in your own current assessment of the environment that these folks upstream and downstream know about, and communicating with them early and often throughout the process so that their apps don't break and they're ready to go. Some other things to think about. A lot of times you don't necessarily always want to rebuild what's already been done. You want to add value. So think about opportunities to optimize some of the costs you might have, or people doing different scans or itemizing reports. There's so many duplicate reports or reports with almost identical information. There may be reports that haven't been used or touched in years. This is a chance to get rid of that baggage. Another thing when you're thinking about some of the case studies that AtScale has with cost savings and being able to use some of the pre-aggregations in the cloud environment are really compelling. I was going to write a story at one point just on that topic. So always be thinking about that. They have some experience, their sales engineers do, on helping folks save cloud costs that are really compelling, so I don't want you to overlook that. Some other things to be thinking about is really it's just a big itemized list. So if you've been through the GDPR process, you probably already have some of this information laying around, but it's a similar itemizing and just figuring out what the report names are, the models that they're using, the ETL processes. And again, where does that business logic live? Is that at report level? Is it at database level? And that type of thing. So here's an example of a landscape. This probably looks pretty familiar. It's pretty old school. We've been using these processes for many, many years, and in the largest organizations in the world, it is still done this way. So you may have these source data systems, and the source data systems now might also include cloud sources such as Salesforce, Marketo, those types of things, as well as your on-premises data. So there's an SAP ERP or an Oracle ERP type system that you might have. So usually you're combining sources from different source systems, and in this case, that process probably isn't really going to change pulling out of that. What might change is coming from this ETL staging, the destination itself. The destination might change to a Hadoop location. It may not. You may already have a Hadoop data warehouse, and now you're just putting a semantic layer. So that's one of the areas that you would certainly document and look at, as well as, of course, these different reports and systems that folks are using to point to the data model and the reporting model. So evaluating your data sources, what do you look for, where do you start? And a lot of times these can be tricky to find. If you're in some of these tools, a lot of times if you look in the data source itself, you'll have to dig in. There might be a process flow in Power BI. They have some Power Query type flows. I think they're calling it something different now. But it's these different ETL flows that they have. In Tableau, there's Tableau Prep now, or there were different types of steps that you could query data up front potentially that was processing data. Spotfire has a built-in, almost an ETL type tool that's in there, and will load data from different sources, and as does some of these other solutions here. So to help you in the white paper as well as in this deck here, I put a few of the file extensions. So if you have to go do a grep search, if you're a Unix person, or if you need to do, say, a Windows search, these are some of the extensions you might look for. So you may look for a PBIX file, or a Tableau, or QVD in ClickWorld. I've got different ones here for each type of file that I know of, and certainly if you have more to add, I'm sure the AtScale team would love to hear about them. These are the ones that I found and I've used most often out in the real world.
All right, thank you, Jen. We've come to a section for Tableau Importer. One of the things that Jen had mentioned was, there are different ways to migrate your data, to implement a semantic layer. And what we've done is we've helped make it a little bit easier for our customers that run and use Tableau. So we've developed the Tableau importer specifically because we found a need in our customer environment where they're managing a lot of different Tableau workbooks. And in order for us to fully assess, to help you fully assess, what kind of cubes to build and what kind of business logic should and shouldn't be moved into an AtScale environment, we decided to create something called the Tableau importer to help you accelerate the analysis of the need of those workbooks. So in the interface, as you can see, we can load your Tableau workbooks into the Tableau importer. Now, it's just not one single file at a time. It's actually, you can load as many Tableau workbook files as you would like into a zip file. And the AtScale Tableau importer will analyze all of that for you. So going through the importer, you can go ahead and upload your file. It is a wizard that will walk you through the process. So you go ahead and load your file, and then you create your project from the data source. Now, in loading different workbooks in a zip file, you will see in the data sources every single data source that is unique in each one of these workbooks. So if you are loading 3 different workbooks that are going through 3 different data sources and accessing 3 different data sources, you will see those listed here under data sources. We prompt for a project name because the initial cube that gets generated will be under this particular project name. We offer an opportunity for you to take a look at the summary of your import. Now, one of the best things about this Tableau importer wizard is it provides the ability for you to see the analysis that has occurred within an instant. When you upload a series of workbooks or even just one workbook, what happens is you can take a look and you can see here it says that there are, how many data sources have been found, how many workbooks are involved, and how many dashboards are involved, and how many worksheets. So from that perspective, you can see, AtScale really reading the workbooks that it's been provided, and you can download the report using that download button. And what that does is it downloads the complete analysis of all of your workbooks. So it takes into account your calculations. It takes into account custom calculations. It takes into account, all of the dimensions and measures that are used and not used, and how many dimensions and how many measures are used throughout the workbook, and consistencies and repetition between workbooks. So it's a full analysis of everything that you're putting into AtScale for your Tableau workbook. We prompt you at that point to go ahead and select the environment. So you have an opportunity here to select production, test, or development environment for your initial cube. And then finally, we ask you in terms of, once we create this cube, who would you like access? Who would you like to give access to? Right now, we provide all my users access to this initial cube within AtScale. So it's not all of your users that are, your Tableau authors. It's not all of your analysts. It's not all of your, IT folks. It's purely the folks that have current access into AtScale and are building cubes. So from that standpoint, you can select all of those folks, including yourself. Or if you're just testing and you're just seeing, if you're just taking a look at what kind of initial cube can I start with, you can just select just myself, and you can provide access later. So once you're all done, what happens there is Tableau Importer then goes ahead and generates your initial cube. Now, you can go ahead and click Finish, and it will take you to the cube as well. But more importantly, what I wanted to show you here was the recommendations page. And this is brand new to our product. The recommendations and warnings page allows you as an AtScale cube, cube designer to take a look at some of the warnings and some of the best practices and recommendations that we are making, at your fingertips. We have what is continuing to increase, in terms of number of pages, but we have a best practices guide for using AtScale with Tableau, and all of the information that we've been collecting through our customers, through our POCs, through just interacting with prospects and learning their business cases and testing ourselves in-house different use cases and things like that with Tableau and AtScale. That has all been built and included into this product. So from that standpoint, what you're seeing in terms of warnings, in terms of recommendations, really have validity and weight in terms of this is what we found to work better, and you might want to consider a few things. And that really is the Tableau importer. Jen, back to you.
Thanks, Wendy. That is super cool. It certainly reminds me of some of the tools that I lived and breathed by when I had to do migrations in the past. So wonderful job there. Designing a model. So if you do use the Tableau import, you certainly have a super running start. No question about that. For some of the other types of models that are out there, there's going to be a little bit more work on your part to do that. So one thing you'll want to do is look at, not all tools have this. For instance, some of the tools in the industry will require you to flatten your data. You can't necessarily use a dimension in fact type star or snowflake schema with them. So you'll want to be thinking about how to design that in the AtScale dimensional world. So it does use, and there's wonderful resources available for you if dimensional modeling is a brand new concept to anyone on the line. There's Kimball Data Warehouse toolkits that I have and I used to carry with me when I was doing consulting. They have spreadsheets in there to help you, and all sorts of little kits that can help you get started learning dimensional modeling. So unlike legacy OLAP, one of the first questions that I had when I was working with AtScale was, what's different? It certainly looks the same. It looks really comfortable to me. So if you have used Analysis Services, which is one of Microsoft products that I used to be a product manager for, or you've used maybe some of the Oracle products that are out there that are OLAP in nature, Hyperion, and some of the other OLAP products in the market, this might look very, very familiar. And what would be different would be the need, you will not need to design aggregation tables. So that has been optimized intelligently, smartly for you. That might be a little different than what you're used to in the past. Mapping reports to AtScale. So the next thing you're going to do once you do a model, right, and we keep moving and progressing down our migration path, is this whole concept of looking at the sources or what you want to develop reports on, and then pointing to that AtScale data model that you've developed. And there you're going to find any gaps. And it's very, very common, as it is in data warehousing, some of the same types of patterns, per se, in design are certainly going to flow through here. So when you look at, you'll want to probably have unique keys or ways to track folks and what system they came from. That's important, and that's what I'm showing here, is just that ability to do that and remember where did these values come from, and having a map for it. So even though this seems like it's tedious work, it's really nice to have your data model defined, and certainly when it comes up in reporting systems, you can link to some of these maps so folks understand where it came from, what in the context of that particular field or that particular design decision that you made in the model itself as to what does, maybe it's a metric, a lot of times metric, what's a qualified lead, and what does a qualified lead really mean in that particular organization's context. This particular spreadsheet I'm showing is from the Data Warehouse Toolkit that I mentioned. So if you do have or have had the Kimball University training for dimensional design modeling, or you get the books, there's the related Kimball Data Warehouse spreadsheets that come in there. They're super helpful, and even if you don't use and fill out all these different columns, they're certainly valuable for the process itself. Usually most of the time, once you get to this point, it's really going to be looking at now any gaps that you might have that might break your reports, or something maybe you have to get later, and figure out when that data source might be available. Another thing you'll want to look at that can change when your report connects. You might want to make some copies of reports and kind of test this, so you don't necessarily break the original, and this should be really best practice for folks. Maybe you're using a source control system or version control, that you can go ahead and give a test of connecting to the AtScale's drivers and making sure the report syntax works with it. And you may see some errors that will pop up if you're not necessarily using some of the ANSI standard SQL context or that is supported. And there's another white paper Wendy has created that's very helpful for working through maybe some of the aggregate functions that's just a little different in syntax, but will work with it. And I'm sure she probably has more to add in the end on this particular topic, since she's an expert in that domain. But this is an area to keep an eye. And when I talked about some of the business logic or calculations that you have that might be built in the front end of a tool, and let me give you a great example. So in Power BI, we used to use the concept of DAX, with the DAX language, and in analysis services, we might use MDX language. In Tableau, they have their own script, as does Spotfire has their own flavor of a script if you're creating a calculation in a front-end report. Those are the types of things, and even historically, as I've designed reporting systems, ideally those are not always, you're going to have users that are going to create their own calculations. But the better practice, of course, is if it's going to be a shared calculation across many reports in an organization, you really only want one version of the truth to manage, or one version of that metric to manage, and usually that'll be at the data source level defined, and then those reports will consume those metrics. But those are the types of areas when you look at where you might run into some issues with going live with your reports. It's usually that report syntax or the custom script craziness in the front end of reports, and we know users do this. That's what can cause a little bit of troubles when you first connect, and then just need to work through updating that to the right syntax. So my last bit of advice and guidance here as you're working through this process is to validate this with your power users, the people that write those crazy scripts in Power BI and Tableau, etc. These folks are usually very avid report testers. They'll dig in, they'll look at, they know what the number means before and afterwards. They may dump data into Excel. Your Excel folks too, if they're pivot table type users and really digging in there, playing around maybe even with VLOOKUPs or VBA scripts, that target persona is a rock star when it comes to testing reports. You just have to find a way to motivate them, and usually it's going to be, you can work with a lot more data, and it's going to enable you to do much more exciting reports that you may never have been able to do before. So you got to find a way to motivate them, but once motivated, they're just rock star testers. Another thing to keep in mind is test a wide range of reports. So definitely ranges ideally over a year. So you want to look at things like, are your calculations working accurately for year over year for a couple years, not just the current year or the current quarter. Another thing you'll want to think about is with hierarchy specifically, if you're using its concept called fully changing dimensions. I don't want to dive too much into it, but basically it means being able to report accurately over time, making sure that that works before and after as well. And then for other tips, I've found some of the assets, sometimes you got to dig around a little bit on, because there's so many wonderful resources on AtScale sites, but finding them and those additional tips in these white papers that have been very deep, like refreshingly deep and wonderful for folks that are having to do this type of work has been made available to you. So do we have any questions? It does look like we have one, at least right now, maybe two coming in.
Yes. Hi, Jen. We do have one question. Does AtScale have an importer for Cognos? If so, what versions of Cognos would be supported? That is a great question. One of the things that we found with the AtScale Tableau importer is how valuable that feature is, both for ourselves when, for our field folks in running POCs, and it also with us internally when we are testing different workbooks, and our customers when they're working with their Tableau authors. But what we decided, to think about was, what about all of these other customers that have other tools? Well, Cognos is definitely on the roadmap. We're currently working on SSAS capability, import capability for SSAS multidimensional, which is currently in development. So Cognos is definitely on the roadmap. We have another question here. It looks similar to analysis services. How long does it take to move to an analysis services database? Well, in general, in terms of moving from one environment, one data warehouse to another, without something like AtScale, planning and the planning of a movement from one data warehouse to another does take a while. So from that perspective, going from a relational data source or going in and taking a look at your large data warehouses, creating a Microsoft Analysis Services OLAP queue can take many months from that perspective, because you're constantly working with your analysts, with the business, and to figure out what's absolutely necessary. You're generating logic, and you're creating essentially the analytics cube that other folks will source from. So from that perspective, a Tableau importer or a SSAS importer will greatly reduce the analysis time for you. I know firsthand in terms of using this tool in working with our customers that my analysis and time that I used to spend analyzing workbooks for our customers used to be right around 20 hours on up. So with this tool, it's easily reduced by like I would say 90%. So I can go ahead and take a look, read out the report, which is a full readout of the summary of the analysis, and I can have proceed on with the conversation with the customer or with our analysts. Any other questions?
I see one regarding MOLAP, and that's sort of interesting. It says, have you worked much with true rollup models such as S-Base? Most of the presentation seems rollup conversions. From writing the white paper, ironically, I'm coming from the analysis services world where most of that is MOLAP and not rollup. In fact, we would tell you as product managers of that system back in the day to avoid direct query and rollup. The performance was horrendous, so we would avoid MOLAP. And certainly the content that was developed in the white paper in here was assuming almost a MOLAP model to some degree. So that's an interesting perspective. So yes, I know that even my past customers when I was in product management was using this system with AtScale. Wendy probably has experience there too.
Great. Okay. So it looks like there aren't any more questions. Let me go ahead and move to. So the next steps here would be to engage with your business analyst to explore the benefits of BI on the data lake. What you want to do is ask for help in a guided evaluation. Jen has had a wonderful presentation today on 10 steps to adopting a semantic layer. So from that perspective, we have an AtScale planning toolkit for you to download off our website, as well as a migration paper, white paper that we have available from our website as well. Jen, do you have any closing notes?
No, thank you for coming today, and I hope you certainly enjoy the content and related content, and certainly if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to the AtScale team.
All right. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone here today thank everyone here today in participating our webinar, and have a great day. Thank you so much, Jen, for
oh, you're welcome. Thanks for the awesome demo. Okay.
All right. Thank you.